Victor Huntington stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, surveying the city skyline that represented decades of ruthless business acumen and calculated risks. At 52, he had everything money could buy except the one thing that continued to elude him: certainty about human nature. "You cannot be serious about this, sir." Thomas, his butler of 20 years, set down the silver tea tray with more force than usual. The delicate china rattled in protest. Victor turned from the window, his steel-gray eyes reflecting the morning light. "I have never been more serious about anything, Thomas. 3 marriages, countless relationships, and every single one dissolved the moment the prenuptial agreements came into question. I need to understand if genuine connection exists or if everything truly has a price tag." Thomas adjusted his pristine white gloves, a nervous habit Victor had learned to recognize as disagreement. "And you believe giving 4 women unlimited spending power will reveal their true character?" "Not just any 4 women," Victor corrected, moving to his mahogany desk where 4 dossiers lay arranged in perfect symmetry. 3 successful independent women who have never needed my money, plus 1 wild card. He tapped the 4th folder with his index finger. "Grace, your housekeeper." Thomas's carefully maintained composure cracked. "Sir, this is highly inappropriate. Miss Martinez has worked for you faithfully for 7 years. She has never given you any reason to question her integrity." "Precisely." Victor opened Grace's file, though he had memorized its contents. Single mother, daughter attending community college, worked 2 jobs before he hired her full-time, sent money to her aging parents in New Mexico every month. She represents something I have lost touch with, Thomas. Normalcy. I want to see what someone unaccustomed to wealth would do. With unlimited resources. Thomas poured tea with practiced precision, the amber liquid streaming in a perfect arc. "And the others?" "Olivia Chen, fashion influencer with 2 million followers. Built her brand from nothing, understands the power of image and luxury." Victor moved to the next file. "Rebecca Stone, one of the youngest partners at Morrison and Associates. Brilliant legal mind, handles portfolios worth billions." And the 3rd. "Natasha Volkov, owns the Volkov Gallery downtown. Old money from Moscow, refined taste, educated at the Sorbonne." Victor closed the files. "Each of them is accomplished, beautiful, and has something to prove. None of them needs my money, which makes this experiment valid." Thomas set the teacup before Victor with a gentle click. "What exactly do you hope to discover?" Victor stared into the dark tea, seeing his reflection distorted on its surface. "I want to know if anyone can see beyond the zeros in my bank account. If someone exists who values something more than material gain." He looked up at Thomas. "Or if my ex-wives were right, and everything in this world is simply a transaction waiting to happen. And if you discover the latter, then I will accept my fate as a man who builds empires but dies alone." Victor's voice carried no self-pity, only resignation. "At least I will have certainty." The following Friday evening, Victor's countryside estate buzzed with carefully orchestrated activity. The sprawling mansion, normally quiet except for essential staff, had been prepared for guests. Thomas supervised the arrangement of 4 suites, each decorated to suit its occupants' known preferences. Grace moved through the kitchen, ensuring everything was perfect for the weekend gathering. She had been told only that Mr. Huntington was hosting potential business partners and needed extra attention to detail. Her worn hands moved efficiently across marble countertops, arranging fresh flowers in crystal vases. "Grace, a moment, please." Victor's voice from the doorway made her jump. "Of course, Mr. Huntington." She dried her hands on her apron, curious about the unusual request. He rarely spoke to her directly beyond morning greetings and occasional compliments about her work. Victor held out a small black box. "This weekend, you are not my employee. You are my guest." Grace's eyes widened. "Sir, I do not understand. Inside this box is a credit card with your name on it. There is no spending limit. He watched her face carefully. I am conducting a social experiment, and I need you to participate. From this moment until Sunday evening, you may purchase anything you desire. Consider it a bonus for your years of dedicated service. Her calloused fingers trembled as she accepted the box. Mr. Huntington, this is too generous. I cannot accept such a gift without understanding what you expect in return. I expect nothing except honesty. Victor's expression softened slightly. 3 other women will join us this weekend. Each has received the same card. How you choose to use it is entirely your decision. There are no rules, no judgments, only observation. But why me? Grace's voice barely rose above a whisper. I am just your housekeeper. Perhaps that is exactly why. Victor turned toward the door. Your suite is the blue room on the 2nd floor. Thomas will bring your belongings up shortly. For this weekend, Grace, I want you to forget about work and think only about what truly matters to you. After he left, Grace stood frozen in the kitchen, the black box feeling impossibly heavy in her hands. Through the window, she watched expensive cars pulling up the circular driveway. Women emerged in designer clothes and perfect makeup, greeted by Thomas with formal courtesy. Grace looked down at her simple cotton dress and comfortable shoes. Whatever game Mr. Huntington was playing, she was clearly the piece that did not fit the board. But as she opened the box and saw her name embossed on the black card, something stirred in her chest. Not excitement about spending money, but curiosity about what this strange test might reveal. In the grand foyer, Olivia Chen examined her surroundings with an influencer's trained eye, already mentally cataloging content opportunities. Rebecca Stone calculated real estate values and investment potential. Natasha Volkov appreciated the authentic Renaissance paintings with a collector's appreciation. None of them noticed the housekeeper watching from the kitchen doorway, holding a credit card that would change all their lives in ways they could not imagine. Saturday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the estate's tall windows. Victor sat in his private study, multiple screens displaying footage from discreetly placed cameras throughout the property and the town below. He had given each woman a car and driver for the day, instructing them only to enjoy themselves freely. Thomas entered with coffee, his expression still disapproving. The ladies are preparing to depart for their shopping excursions. Good. Victor did not look away from the monitors. Let us see what choices they make when every door is open to them. Olivia Chen emerged first, stunning in a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She slid into the luxury sedan with practiced grace, already on her phone. Take me to the designer district, she instructed, her driver. I want to hit Chanel, Dior, Hermes, and that new boutique everyone is talking about. Victor watched as she documented everything. Her phone never stopped moving, capturing her reflection in store windows, the shopping bags accumulating. In her arms, the envious glances from other shoppers. At Cartier, she spent 40 minutes selecting a diamond bracelet, not because she loved it particularly, but because the light caught it perfectly for her followers. She is building her brand, Thomas observed. Every purchase is content. She is building an illusion, Victor corrected. Watch how she dismisses the salespeople once the transaction completes. No thank you, no acknowledgement. They are props in her performance. By noon, Olivia had spent over $300,000. Clothes she would wear once for photographs, jewelry that would sit in a vault, handbags that would be replaced next season. She posted each acquisition with carefully crafted captions about luxury and success, her follower count climbing with every update. Rebecca Stone took a different approach entirely. Her first stop was a commercial real estate office where she spent 2 hours reviewing investment properties. Victor leaned forward, intrigued, as she negotiated the purchase of a small apartment building in an up-and-coming neighborhood. "Smart," he murmured. "She sees the card as capital, not a shopping spree." Rebecca moved through the day with calculated precision. She bought stocks in emerging technology companies, hired a financial advisor to structure trusts, purchased a rare first-edition book collection that would appreciate in value. At a luxury car dealership, she bought a vintage Mercedes, not for pleasure, but because she knew its value would triple in 5 years. "Everything she acquires is an asset," Thomas noted. "She thinks like you, sir," Victor frowned. "She thinks like a machine. Watch her face. No joy, no spontaneity. She is turning free money into a portfolio exercise." By evening, Rebecca had spent over $1 million, and every penny could be justified on a spreadsheet. She returned to the estate satisfied, having won a game Victor had not realized he was playing. Natasha Volkov's day reflected her refined background. She visited 3 art galleries, a rare bookshop, and an antique auction. Victor watched as she spent hours examining a 19th-century painting, discussing brushstrokes and provenance with the gallery owner. When she finally purchased it for half, $1 million, her face showed genuine pleasure. "At least she appreciates beauty," Thomas said. But Victor saw something else. Natasha bought only pieces that would impress her circle, items that would elevate her gallery's reputation. A Ming Dynasty vase, not for her home, but for public display. A sculpture by an emerging artist she could claim to have discovered first. Even her appreciation of beauty was transactional, currency in the world of cultural elitism. She ended her day at an exclusive wine auction, purchasing bottles worth $50,000 each. "For my upcoming gallery opening," she explained to her driver. "First impressions matter in my world." Then Victor switched to the 4th screen, the one he had been avoiding. Grace Martinez sat in the back of her assigned car, the driver waiting patiently as she stared at the credit card in her hands. For 20 minutes, she did not move. "Where would you like to go, ma'am?" the driver finally asked. Grace looked up, her eyes uncertain. "I need to make several stops. They might not be the places you usually take Mr. Huntington's guests." Her first destination was the county hospital. Victor watched, confused, as she approached the billing department. "I would like to pay outstanding medical bills for patients who cannot afford them," she said quietly. "Whatever this card will cover." The administrator stared at her in disbelief. "Ma'am, we have families with bills in the hundreds of thousands. Then we should help as many as we can." Victor sat forward abruptly. "What is she doing?" Grace spent 2 hours at the hospital, working with social workers to identify the most desperate cases. A single father facing bankruptcy over his daughter's cancer treatment. An elderly couple choosing between medication and rent. A young woman whose emergency surgery had destroyed her savings. Grace paid them all, asking nothing in return, not even their names. "This must be performance," Victor said, though his voice lacked conviction. "She knows I am watching." But Thomas shook his head. "Sir, the cameras in the town are known only to you and me. She has no reason to believe anyone is documenting this." Grace's next stop was an elementary school in a struggling neighborhood. She met with the principal, asking about needs. Within an hour, she had purchased new computers for the library, musical instruments for the canceled music program, and established a fund for students who could not afford field trips or supplies. At a grocery store, she filled 3 carts with non-perishable food and delivered them to a homeless shelter. At a veterinary clinic, she paid for surgeries for abandoned animals. At a senior center, she arranged for building repairs and new wheelchairs. Victor watched in silence as Grace moved through the day with quiet purpose. Unlike Olivia, she took no photographs. Unlike Rebecca, she sought no return on investment. Unlike Natasha, she requested no recognition. She simply helped, one person at a time, her face showing not pride but relief that she finally had the means to ease suffering she had witnessed but been powerless to address. "How much has she spent?" Victor asked, his voice tight. Thomas checked his tablet. "Approximately $800,000, all of it on others." As sunset painted the sky orange and purple, Grace made one final stop. A nursery specializing in rare plants and garden restoration. Victor watched as she walked, through rows of flowers and shrubs, finally stopping before a collection of heirloom roses. "These are varieties from the 1940s, the nursery owner explained. "Very difficult to maintain, but absolutely stunning when properly cared for." Grace touched a cream-colored bloom gently. "They are perfect. I need enough to restore a garden, a special garden that has been neglected too long." Victor's breath caught. His mother's garden, the one she had planted when he was a child, filled with roses she had cultivated for decades. After her death 5 years ago, he had locked the garden gate, unable to bear looking at its decay. "How does she know about that?" he whispered. Grace loaded the car with roses, soil amendments, gardening tools, and hired a landscaping crew to begin work Monday morning. As she headed back to the estate, she stopped at one more place, a small bookstore where she purchased a single item, a leather-bound journal and a quality pen. She returned to the estate as stars appeared overhead, carrying her one personal purchase. The other women arrived in separate cars, laden with shopping bags, documentation, and acquisition receipts. Victor turned off the monitors, his mind reeling. He had designed this experiment to confirm his cynicism, to prove that everyone had a price and every relationship was transactional. But Grace Martinez had just shattered his hypothesis completely. Sunday evening gathered the four women in Victor's library, a room lined with first editions and leather-bound volumes that represented knowledge acquired but rarely absorbed. A fire crackled in the marble fireplace, casting dancing shadows across their faces. Victor stood before them, hands clasped behind his back, while Thomas observed from the doorway. "I appreciate your participation in my weekend experiment," Victor began, his voice measured. "Each of you received unlimited resources. How you chose to use them has been illuminating." Olivia crossed her legs, her new Louboutin heels glinting in the firelight. "I assume you want explanations?" "I want understanding." Victor gestured to Rebecca. "You first. Walk me through your decision-making process." Rebecca opened her tablet with business-like efficiency. "I treated the card as venture capital. Real estate in emerging markets, diversified stock portfolio, tangible assets with appreciation potential. I turned your gift into a self-sustaining investment structure that will generate passive income for years. Every dollar spent was strategic." "And what did you gain personally?" Victor asked. "Security, independence, the ability to never rely on anyone else's wealth again." Rebecca's eyes met his without flinching. "Is that not what you wanted to hear? That I am not after your money because I can generate my own?" Victor nodded slowly. "Natasha?" The gallery owner set down her wine glass, the burgundy liquid swirling like liquid rubies. "I invested in beauty, Victor. Art is not merely decoration. It is cultural currency, historical preservation, and social capital. The pieces I acquired will open doors that money alone cannot. They demonstrate taste, education, and connections to the right circles." "So your purchases were about status," Victor observed. "Everything is about status when you move in certain worlds." Natasha smiled coolly. "I thought you, of all people, would understand that. Your entire empire is built on perception and positioning." Victor turned to Olivia, who was already anticipating his question. "I built my brand," she said, scrolling through her phone to show engagement metrics. 3 million impressions, 50,000 new followers, 12 sponsorship offers. I turned your credit card into a marketing campaign worth more than what I spent. My audience wants aspiration, and I gave them a fairy tale weekend. Everyone wins. Except the fairy tale is not real, Victor said quietly. The moment the card expires, the fantasy collapses. Olivia shrugged. All content is fantasy, Victor. People do not follow me for reality. They follow me for the life they wish they had. Victor absorbed their answers, feeling his hypothesis confirming itself. Strategic, calculated, self-serving. Everything was a transaction, just as he had suspected. Then he turned to Grace, who sat apart from the others, her hands folded in her lap, still wearing the same simple dress from Friday. Grace, you spent $800,000 in a single day. Tell me where it went. Grace looked up, her eyes reflecting the firelight with something that might have been tears. I helped people who needed help. Hospital bills, school supplies, food for families, medicine for elderly folks who were choosing between pills and meals. There is so much pain in the world that money could ease, at least temporarily. Charity. Rebecca's tone suggested the word tasted bitter. Admirable, but financially irresponsible. Those people will face new bills next month. You created dependency, not solutions. Grace's voice remained soft but firm. Maybe 1 month of breathing room is enough for someone to find a new job, or heal enough to work again, or simply feel that someone in the world cares if they suffer. Not everything needs to be a permanent fix to matter. And the garden? Victor asked, his throat suddenly tight. Why, my mother's garden? The room went silent. The other women looked confused, unaware of this detail. Grace reached into her bag and withdrew an old leather journal, its pages yellowed with age. 2 months ago, I was cleaning the attic storage rooms. I found boxes of your mother's belongings, her journals. I know I should not have read them, but once I started, I could not stop. She opened the journal to a marked page and read aloud, her voice trembling. June 15th, 1985. Victor turned 7 today. We spent the afternoon in the rose garden, planting a new section together. He was so careful with each root, so concerned about doing it right. He asked me if the roses would still be here when he grew up. I told him that if we tend them with love, they will outlast us both. He made me promise we would always take care of them together. Grace closed the journal carefully. After she passed, you locked the garden. I have watched you avoid that section of the estate for 5 years. But those roses are not dead, Victor. They are struggling, overgrown, desperate for attention. They are still fighting to bloom, just like she promised they would. Victor turned away, his jaw clenched against emotion he had not allowed himself to feel in years. I spent the money on restoration because I realized something reading her words, Grace continued. She wrote about teaching you that wealth without purpose is just numbers on paper, that the measure of a person is not what they accumulate, but what they cultivate. She was not talking about roses. She was talking about relationships, kindness, connection. This is manipulative, Olivia interjected. She researched you and created an emotional angle. But Thomas stepped forward, his voice cutting through the room. Miss Martinez requested permission to clean the attic 3 months ago as part of her normal duties. She had no knowledge of this weekend's experiment. She could not have planned this. Grace stood, setting the journal on Victor's desk. I also spent $50,000 on my daughter's education fund. I am not a saint. I wanted to secure her future. But everything else went to people who needed it more than I need new clothes or fancy vacations. She looked at Victor directly. You wanted to know if people can see beyond money? I think you asked the wrong question. The real question is whether you can see beyond it. Victor picked up the journal, his fingers tracing his mother's handwriting. Memories flooded back. Her hands in the soil, teaching him patience. Her laughter, when roses bloomed. Her insistence that their family's wealth was a responsibility, not a prize. "What did you hope to discover this weekend?" Grace asked gently. "That everyone is selfish? That love is impossible? That your cynicism is justified?" She moved toward the door, then paused. "Your mother wrote something else in that journal. She wrote that she worried you would inherit your father's brilliance for business but forget her lessons about humanity. She hoped you would find someone who remembered what truly matters." After Grace left, the room remained heavy with unspoken truths. Rebecca, Natasha, and Olivia exchanged glances, suddenly aware they had failed a test they had not understood. Victor dismissed them with quiet thanks and generous compensation for their time. When only Thomas remained, the butler approached. "Carefully, what will you do now, sir?" Victor stared at his mother's journal, then at the window overlooking the locked garden gate. "I'm going to unlock something that should never have been closed." He looked at Thomas, and for the first time in years, his expression held something other than calculation. "And tomorrow, I am going to ask Grace Martinez if she would consider a partnership. Not romantic, not transactional. A foundation to continue what she started yesterday. My resources, her wisdom about where they can do the most good." "And the experiment?" Thomas asked. "The experiment proved that I was asking the wrong questions all along." Victor opened the journal to a random page, reading his mother's words. About young Victor's compassion for injured birds, his tears over a neighbor's hardship. "I thought wealth isolated me from genuine connection. But I isolated myself. I built walls and called them wisdom, chose cynicism and called it protection." He walked to the window, watching Grace in the garden below, kneeling beside the roses, even in darkness, her hands already working to clear away years of neglect. She did not see a billionaire this weekend, Thomas. She saw a man who forgot how to tend the things that matter most. And rather than judge me for it, she simply started repairing what was broken. Victor Huntington had spent his life accumulating wealth and losing faith. But watching his housekeeper restore his mother's garden with money that could have changed her own life completely, he finally understood what his mother had tried to teach him decades ago. The greatest poverty was not lack of money. It was lack of empathy, connection, and purpose. And the richest investment anyone could make was in the simple, revolutionary act of caring about someone other than yourself. The roses would bloom again, and perhaps so would he.